in our camper because it's the only place I know my kids and the dogs won't lose their minds.
That's how it goes. All right. You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's do it. All right.
Okay.
Welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. If you want to get in shape for spring bear, some summer hiking, or get a jump start on the fall season of trapping, sign up with the code Okayest30 for a free 30-day trial. With that out of the way, my guest today is a true Renaissance woman. She's an entrepreneur, a hunter, a trapper, a wife, and a mother, and she does it all with something that's often lost in this world, a sense of humor. Laura Groesbeck, a.k.a. the Dickless Hunter, as it says on her sweatshirt if you're watching. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to start by kind of diving in how I first heard about you, which was through my wife. So 2 years ago, I had a booth at the Western Hunt Expo, and my wife and my young children were with us, and my wife would not shut up about your Instagram. I had to see so many bedazzled skulls, which were freaking awesome, on the way to the show, at the show, and she was just so pumped to go to your booth and look at all the jewelry and really artwork that you've done. And you can't not look at the stuff you do and say, wow, that's pretty dang incredible. So how did you get started in the business of both jewelry and, you know, what I call bedazzling skulls?
Well, honestly, so they both started really around the same time. With the skulls, it truly was the most random freaking thing ever. I was house sitting for my parents while they were gone backpacking the PCT. So I was at their house for 6 months taking care of their goats, their 100 freaking pet snakes, and their cats and their dogs and stuff. And this is a house I grew up in my whole life, so it's nothing new. And one day I was just kind of cleaning around the house and cleaning around their bookcases that have like a couple bear skulls, I have a Lena skull, a bunch of coyote skulls, a bunch of badger skulls, and then like above that on the wall, there's some whitetail euros. So like you look at the bookcase and there's just like a bunch of skulls up there. And I don't know why one day I was just looking at them. And I think I was really comparing like the javelina skull to the black bear skull because it's gnarly. Like a 300-pound black bear skull is like the same size as a 40-pound javelina. Like they're pretty wicked. And I was just looking at them and I just thought to myself, like, it'd be really cool to do something to where they stood out more individually rather than it just being a pile of skulls up there. Because it's like they're all cool, but they look just like a pile of skulls. You can't appreciate them on their own. And I was just thinking to myself, I was looking at it, I'm like, maybe paint them. I'm like, well, I can't paint worth a shit, so probably not. And then I thought, well, maybe like beads, like little tiny beads. Maybe I can make like a really cool design with some tiny beads. And I was like, yeah. So I text my dad on his InReach. And I was like, hey, Dad, can I like try beading one of your coyote skulls? And he said, yeah, sure, go for it. So literally that night, I drove to Michael's and bought just this case of like a variety of these seed beads. It was probably like $20, like just cheap ass beads. And some random glue, sat down with no plan at all and was like, okay. And kind of tried to throw it together, but I still have that first skull I did. And it looks like a first skull because you can see where I didn't know what the fuck I was doing and they're kind of just like chucked on there. And then it starts to have some sort of rhyme or rhythm like within the skull. And I did that first one and I was like, oh yeah, that was like kind of cool. I think I could figure it out to do it better. And I just never stopped from there pretty much. I was just doing it for fun. And then I had somebody reach out to me like 4 or 5 months into doing it. Just I would share it on my Facebook. And they asked if I would bead their bull elk for them.
Oh, wow.
And do like a repair job on the antlers. And I was like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah, I would. Like, I never thought someone would pay me to do that. Like, I was just doing it for fun. And so pretty much it just took off from there, and I've been doing it for 5 years now. Absolute blessing because I just love it so much. It's like I've always done art. I used to do charcoal drawings, and after I was done with the drawing, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's done. Like, I'm good on the drawing for a while, but this, I'm just ready to get to the next one, and I never get bored of it. So it's like my thing. I really, really love it.
And what
And then
was the real quick? How long did that first coyote take you to bead? Um, and I do want to see a picture of it. Maybe you can send it to me afterwards.
oh, I will. You're gonna be like, holy shit, that is bad. It looks like spiderweb had diarrhea on it, and so like it's bad. But that first one probably took me like 12 hours or so to do. I would just stay up at night after my kids went to bed and I'd do it, that's pretty much how I still do it. I do a lot of beading at night
Mhm.
and I do my antler stuff during the day since it's like loud. But but yeah, I'll send you a picture. It's rough. But yeah, I really enjoy it and been very, very blessed to have a lot of people. Like most of my work right now, like 95% of the skulls I bead are ones that people mail to me
Hmm.
and I bead them for them. I've done a few pieces that are like I got the skull and I chose the design and I did it and I sold it as a finished piece. But I very rarely have the time to get to do one of those because I'm busy doing other people's, which is a total blessing. So, and then on the antler jewelry, that was like only 4 months after I started doing the skulls. I saw some antler jewelry just I don't know if it was like on Facebook or something, like an ad for it. And I was like, oh, I really like that idea. And I spent like a while looking through like online for antler jewelry that I really liked. And I'd see stuff, I'm like, oh, that's cute, but like that's not really me. It's like not really like what I'm looking for. And finally I was like, gosh dang, whatever, like screw it. Well, I've got a Dremel and I have some
Hmm.
sheds. I'm like, I'm just gonna like make myself some jewelry. And again, that's what I did. Like, I've just made some jewelry for me and then shared it on Facebook. Like, oh, I made some jewelry out of antler. And then I got asked, like, right away, oh, would you make me one? I'll buy it. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll make you some. And again, that's literally how it started. I just started making it for myself and it turned into full-time business. So,
Which is awesome, and testament to it. Like prior to meeting you and your husband, I was hearing about you through my wife, who was only adjacently kind of involved in the hunting and outdoor space. So like it had permeated through, just hunting, trapping, outdoor, and is reaching other people who are really interested in your jewelry, in your artwork. And it's pretty dang cool to then meet you in person and see where you have a booth at like the Western Hunt Expo with not just like a skull or a set of earrings, but you have a full dang booth of just stuff to sell.
yep. Yeah, it's a big variety, like between the skulls, the different types of skulls. I try to like make as many different kind of designs as possible when I get the choice to do my own. And then the jewelry, I try to make something mainly it's like always mainly targeted towards women. I have done quite a bit of jewelry for men, but that's usually just like I have them reach out to me and they tell me what they're looking for since men don't wear jewelry as much. But yeah, I could do like the bear claw. I'm wearing turkey spur earrings today
Mhm.
from one of my turkeys a few years ago and stuff. So it's like the possibilities with the skulls and the jewelry is just endless. And I really enjoy making especially custom pieces for people who like have something in mind because that's why I started making it, because I couldn't find what I wanted. So when people come to me and they're like, I kind of have this in mind, could you make it? And I make it for them. That brings me a lot of fulfillment. So it's
Well, that's
pretty
awesome.
fun.
And again, it's cool to see you saved me this year at the Hunt Expo by helping me get something for my wife and my daughter who weren't able to attend. So that was helpful. So hunters and trappers out there listening, if you want to, do good and go above and beyond flowers, definitely check out some of
Yeah,
Laura's stuff.
when I'm at the Western Hut Expo, the first year, this last year was my third year doing it, and the first year I was like all professional. I was trying to be very like watch my mouth and everything, which takes a way more energy for me than I would like to admit. But then after the first year, I was like, you know what? Like, screw it. And I just started being more myself, especially this last year. I see people walking by, I'm like, you get come over here. Like, I know you, I see you with that rifle. I'm sure your wife wants some like a necklace.
Oh,
But yeah, it's really fun. I met a lot of really cool people through my business side of everything. So yeah, just another way to connect with people out there in the industry or the community.
And speaking of that community, you kind of alluded to it, and it might foreshadow your answer here, but we're here to talk about trapping. You're a trapper, your family traps. You mentioned like getting into the beating of skulls. You obviously come from a family that is hunting, etc. What was your first introduction to trapping specifically? And do you have like a first memory of your time out there trapping?
So I'm like a bit of an oddity when it comes to like getting your foot in the door when it comes, especially to trapping, because that's so, as you know, not a lot of people do that. It's a very lost art and a skill that not very many people are carrying on. But so my first real introduction to trapping would have been with my husband Jace when we were dating. And we started dating in June. So that first trapping season that rolled around and we were spending all of our time together. He was like, well, I want to go put out some like beaver sets and otter sets. You want to come with me? And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. Because I've been so interested in trapping my whole life. Like, I think you might saw my new tattoo of Jeremiah Johnson on my arm. That is my all-time favorite movie. And I know in that movie they don't show a ton of the trapping side of everything, but I watched a lot of like the old Western movies like that, like Mountain Men, where they're just these rugged ass trappers, and I just am so fascinated with that part of history. Like, I could give a shit about the Roman Empire. Like, I want to know about the trappers, the men that survived in the mountains all winter and like the absolute most insane conditions, trapping and making a living. Like, I think that's so amazing. And I was always interested in it my whole life, and I never knew anyone who trapped. Maybe like a raccoon that kept getting the dog food or something. Like, just, little stupid stuff. But no real trappers until I met my husband. And when I finally got the opportunity to go out, I was so excited because it's something I always wanted to do, just never had the chance. And really, he helped me get into it because if you can go tag along with somebody with anything like hunting, fishing, trapping, it doesn't even have to be outdoor related, but you go with someone who's good at it, it'll save you years of trial and error on your own. And even over like the tiniest little things. So I finally got to go with him and I loved it right away. I always say this, I'm like a 5-year-old at heart. I like looking for things. Like, I don't know. I like looking for everything. So a trapper is always looking for sign. You're looking at the tiniest little details all the time. And so that part of the trapping world, I just soak right in. I just love looking for the little things that get just completely missed. But yeah, that was my first introduction. I tagged along with him on that first year, got my trapper's ed done before the next season, and then that's when I started trapping for myself. So
That's awesome. So do you guys run separate lines now, or are you often kind of doing same lines, switching out checking? And is it also still mostly river sets for beaver and otter, or have you also branched out to canines and other critters?
So I really do feel bad for my husband because he works a normal job, and he works all day. And like, in the trapping season, the days are fucking short. And it's just a lot for him to work all day, get off. He just wants to get home to the family, especially, and like he doesn't want to have to go check all his sets at night and then go home super late. So Jace unfortunately hasn't had the time or like the extra motivation to want to go trap the last couple of years. He's put out a couple otter sets in a couple of spots that he is our like, it's a guarantee pretty much. It just never fails. It's a tried and true little spot. Besides from that, he hasn't really gone out and trapped very hard. So all of my trapping the last 2 years, especially, has been 100% on my own. Going out, scouting, finding my spots, and running them 100% by myself. So I wish he loves trapping. He just wishes that he had more time because he's at a point with most people, you have to pick and choose. Do you want to run a trap line not see your family as much, and when you're tired and run down, or do you want to come home and spend time with them? And like I'm already running my trap line, so when he has like a day off or anything, he'll just come tag along with me. So he
Yeah.
kind of feels like he gets to get out there too.
That's
But
good. It's one of those things, and guests all the time, myself included, is, and I think one of our mutual friends, Adam Grenda, said it: when you are running a trap line, it's a second full time job if you have a full time job, and it is exhausting. And then you throw in family, other commitments. Like I struggle with it, which is why I'm very much a hobby trapper these days. Is you still work a full time job, and then the days are short, like you mentioned, and you are committed to that line if you put it out. So it does
yeah,
become a big juggling act to figure out what you want to commit to any given season.
yeah, it's hard, man. I'll be honest. I run my own business and I work from home, so I am very blessed to get to choose and run my own hours and everything. And I've had a hard time even this last year with like I have such big goals. Like I would love to just go have a huge trap line out there. There's a few areas that I know are killer, and I know for sure I could go out to this one area and go trap wolves. Like I fucking know I could. But that place is 2 hours away one direction and then maybe another 45-minute hike in, and I'm like every 3 days. Plus, if you're running any other traps, like it's so much time, and it's hard even when you have the luxury of managing your own time. But yeah, it's a tough balancing act because like you said, you put a trap out there, there's no excuse. You are now 100% committed to go out there in 72 hours and check it, maintain it, whatever else. But so like right now this year you asked like what I've been running. I mainly do water sets just because for one, I spend so much time on the river just all year round doing all like fishing, and I take my kids down there. So basically, I'm scouting the river 365 days a year, damn near. So I have like, I would say 120 miles of river completely, like, I know like the back of my hand. And I know what's going on all year round with the animals there. So, and I really do love water trapping. It's just so much fun. Um, And I love the animals. I love otters, beavers, mink. Those little those little assholes. They're so fun. I love them all. They're so interesting. And some of them are very much challenged. Like the otters can be very challenging. The mink are super challenging, especially on the way the terrain is around the river here. It's not like they have like this path. It's like all bouldery stuff. So they could be beat bopping up here in the rocks. There's no rhyme or reason to like a specific route they travel when they're on the shore or anything. But and I have gotten into land trapping. Like I've always trapped raccoons with footholds too, not just the dog proofs. And I've done a little bit of trapping for coyotes, not a lot because right around where I live, there really isn't a lot of coyotes. You'd have to go about an hour to get into the coyotes pretty good. And I'm kind of like, well, if I'm going to drive an hour to go trap something, I think I'd rather go try to trap a bobcat or trap for wolves or something. But so 90% of my trapping is water, and then I do a little bit of land trapping. But I just got a four-wheeler with tracks this year.
Mm.
So this next trapping season, I'll be probably 50% in the water trapping and then 50% into finally being able to get into the country where like the bobcats are and some wolves are. So yeah, this next season is going to be really exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I live up in the Sawtooth, so I have direct access to do a lot more of the foot holding for wolves, bobcats, that. But it's such a blast. So speaking of mink, I saw a few pictures of mink you had caught, but
Yeah.
didn't quite turn out to be great fur because there wasn't much of them left. What happened there?
Yeah, so that was probably the same one. That I had one that I was using these boxes that my dad made, and I was going to use them for marten trapping, but again, I just wasn't able to get up into the marten country. Like it's so hard with the access part of trapping depending on where you live. Like a lot of the time you have to have some sort of side-by-side, four-wheeler, or freaking snowmobile to get not just where the animals are, but away from the other trappers too. But so I used those marten boxes for mink sets along the river, and they worked great. They did actually pretty good. And I come around the corner, and my son's like, "Trap's gone." And I was like, "Is it?" And I'm like, "Well, it's gotta be right here." And I looked around, and it was just something tore it up. Like was eating on it in the trap. I honestly don't know what it was because there was no. It was like a grassy edge there. There was no place to see either. I didn't see any poop. I didn't see any tracks. So I don't know. Something tore it out. Well, the mink will flop out of the box usually and be like laying on the ground right there. And it was kind of covered in the bushes. Like I made sure it wasn't going to be exposed for like an eagle or something to see it. But I would guess either it was another mink or an otter. Someone suggested a cat on the trapping page, but I'm like, where it was, I'm like, there is no fucking cats out here. I'm like, there's no cats. There's no houses anywhere around here. So I don't know. It's a bummer. Like, I don't know if you've had anything chewed on while it's been in the trap, but that is it's devastating, even if it's something like a small animal like a mink versus like if a coyote had been tore up, like a beautiful pelted coyote. But it's like you do all this work to be successful, and then you're like, yes, I'm freaking successful, and then something made it, you're like, fuck! Damn it.
Yeah, it's depressing, and I think that's
It
one of
is.
the interesting things with trapping, and it goes back to I love Jeremiah Johnson. That's what kind of pushed me over the edge to leave like my past life behind and start trapping and hunting. However, how they survived is an amazing and interesting thing to think about, but also how they survive with the constant highs and lows, and like it's high highs and then super low depression. When you do all that work, you do connect on an animal you're intending to, and all of a sudden something else happens to it. It's devastating.
Yeah, it's like you did everything right, and you did it right, and then something just completely out of your control happens, and you basically just have to like say fuck and then brush it off and keep going. Like there's nothing else you can do about it. I just with that specific set, I just didn't reset right there because I'm like, clearly something is hunting right here or whatever, so I'm just not going to reset right here.
Yeah.
But I did learn something really interesting about mink a couple years ago that I don't know if you know or not. That the number one like killer of mink is other mink. Like they're super aggressive to each other, except for in the mating season when the females and males will get together. But like if a male mink comes into another like male mink's territory, they'll kill each other.
I did
Super
not know
aggressive.
that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's like mink and marten, super cute animals, otter too. But you catch one and you take their skull and you start looking at their teeth structure. They are vicious little critters.
Yeah. Yeah, like a mink is basically like a mini otter, and you skin out an otter and it's just solid muscle. Like it's unreal. I don't know if you saw that video. Recently a friend of mine sent it to me because she knew that I'd picked up roadkill otter. And it was a video of this guy on the side of the highway with this otter like latched onto his leg, like he must have gone over to save it, and it's just like dangling on his leg. But I actually almost had the same situation happen. I wasn't trying to save it, but I was coming home with my kids from Lewiston, coming up the river in the summertime, and I'm like, oh, we see something in the road. I'm like, I think that was an otter. And my son's like, no, I think it was a mink. And I'm like, no, it was big, dude. And it was kind of curled up in the other lane, like right in the middle. And so we turned around, came back, drove over the top of it, and then like turned around again because every pullout's like 2 miles away, like apart. Happened to be a pullout right next to it. So I pulled over real quick. My son Weston was like, oh, I'll grab it. I'm like, no, I'll just grab it real quick. Thank goodness. I ran over and like grabbed like this, and it like whipped around. I thought it was dead, and it was still alive. And I was like, ah! my soul left my body because the last thing I ever want to do is get bit by an otter. Like, oh my gosh, that would latch on and not let go. But I put him out of his misery because his back had been run over and it like he was dragging his back legs. It was pretty brutal. But yeah, I know some people that like will use and drown sets are super effective for otters and beavers and everything. But I always hear maybe some stories where the set like the set failed, but the otter's still in the foothold, yeah. Is like trying to deal with an otter in a foothold is not something I want to put on my list of things to do.
Nope.
So I always use like on my otters and my beavers, I just use 330s. I like the Dukes a lot. I have some Bridgers, but I don't like the safeties on the Bridgers very much. Like they're such a pain to like get off because they're thick instead of just like a wire. So, I mean, those 330s are just
Money.
devastating.
Yeah, they're money
Yes.
for,
Yeah.
not having to deal with coming from experience and what you probably saw with a unfortunately paralyzed, almost roadkill otter, probably the pound for pound strongest animal out there. And they might only be 20 to 40 pounds, but you don't want to
Yeah.
wrestle with it.
Oh, hell no. Yeah. Like, I'm sure you saw that article on that gal in Montana. I think it was Montana
Yep.
floating who, like, it swam over and just shredded her face. And there was I shared that to my Instagram. And a retired fish and game officer from Washington, she sent me an article on this case that happened when she was working where this grandma took her grandson out to the lake and an otter swam up to her grandson, started attacking him.
Oh, wow.
The grandma came in and like grabbed it, and the otter turned on her face, and it like ripped her eye out, and all kinds of like it like they're freaking brutal, super amazing animals, but not something that's you want to like fuck with at all.
Mm-mm.
And they're like that's another thing. Like I love all animals. They're all very very interesting. They all have a place in the ecosystem, and they're super fascinating. Have a lot of respect for them. But like there's a dark side to like all the animals out there. Like the otters, they'll kill other otters if they come into their territory. They'll go into beaver dens and kill the pups, like kill the babies in there and push the whole family out. They're terrorists. Like they are terrors of the river. Like they're wolves of the water, really, truly.
Yep.
Beautiful, very, very interesting. It's on the positive side, they're very like family oriented, so it's really cool getting to see them interact with each other and they're super curious, which is interesting. But yeah, they're nothing to be messed with.
No, they're crazy critters. But you mentioned too, like when you were going over to pick up that roadkill otter, your son was anxious to get out and do it. And I think I saw photos too where he may have like been working on helping you with your trap line and gotten some otter too. So I'm curious as a mom, full-time entrepreneur, mom to 4 kids, running trap lines in the winter. How have you started to handle and juggle that, like your kids' interest and making sure they do have an interest in exposing them to it? Because I'm starting to, I don't want to say get it, but fumble with that right now. So, any advice for people who have younger kids, getting them out on the trap line with you?
Yeah. So Weston, he's my oldest boy. He's 11. He actually got his trapper's ed done right after he turned 10. And because he went that first season where I was really out a ton, because like the couple of seasons before, I was just going on like a little bit here and there, focusing on like the raccoons around our town because they're really, really hard on like the turkey nesting and pheasants and all of that in the springtime. And I was getting calls from people around here who were like, we got raccoons in my chicken coop and stuff. And so like I was just having fun with that because raccoons are very fun to go trap. They're just really curious, and there's a whole bunch of different kind of sets you can do for them that you can't do for any other animal. But that first like last season, not this past one, but the one before, I was taking my kids out with me a ton. And Weston was the one of my 4 who was wanting, like, he wanted to go every time. Every time we went out, he was looking for sign. He wanted to see what I was doing. Like, he wanted to be very hands-on. And I don't force my kids to, like, okay, every guys, like, stop dicking off and watch what I'm doing. Like, pay attention. This is class. If they want to watch and learn and they're curious, then I'll absolutely take the opportunity. And every now and then I'll be like, I'll just kind of point things out and have like a casual teaching session about what I'm doing. But I never want to like push my kids with anything outdoors because I don't want to be the reason that they're like turned off from either hunting or fishing or trapping because I forced them to go too hard into it, which they all love everything outdoors, a blessing. But Weston got his trapper's ed done. So this last season, I took him out trapping with me. And there's this one spot that I always catch otters in, like it's a tried and true spot. And I asked him, I was like, well, and he hadn't remembered it from the season before. And I'm like, all right, showed him how to set a 330. And when I set my 330s, I always just set them at home, keep the safeties on. So when you get out in the field, I have my setters with me always. But I mean, all you have to do is just pull them, do this trigger, and then let it go and set it. So I showed him how to do it. Then I made him do it by himself a couple times. And my son's super strong, so that helps out that he's a good learner too. He understood the concept of where not to have your hands. And I told him, I was like, all right, well, where, like looking at right here, like where do you want to set your trap? And he's like, right there. I'm like, good, because that's where I want to set mine. So he set his there, and I like 72 hours later we came back and he had his first otter. And so cool just getting to see him trap his first animal. So he had that, and we checked it in, and then he redid his set and put it right back there. Another 72 hours later, he had his second otter, and I was like, oh, I was like, holy shit, well, good job, Weston. And I was like, all right, like, I know this is like kind of not to be expected, so don't be disappointed when we come out next time and there's not something in the trap. But yeah, that was super cool. So he trapped 2 otters this season all by himself. He trapped a couple raccoons around town by himself too. But yeah, he really, really enjoys it. And bringing the rest of my kids along, it's with the water trapping thing is easier because when you're water trapping, you're not having to be super conscious about like scent control and everything. Like if they touch the traps, I'm not gonna like be livid that they just ruined it and I'm gonna have to go home and boil it and do this huge process. It's very kid friendly to bring your kids on the trap line water trapping. I would even say with like marten trapping, it's pretty kid friendly as well, because you don't have to be like so scent conscious. It's just the things like coyote trapping, like canine trapping. That's when it gets tricky bringing your kids, because you're like, don't step on that piece of grass and like, or sit down, or like, don't like touch the trees. Like, you don't want to pass scent around your area, or
drop your graham cracker.
yeah. Oh yeah. 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 No snacks, no drinking, don't spit, no going poop behind the bush.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's where it's tough. It's just on the canines. But I feel like pretty much every other animal is very, very welcoming to bring your kid along with you. And like, you can get them involved by like, here, carry this, please. Like, have them carry some gear. Have them help. Like, if you have lure going into your like mink, you're doing a pocket set for mink and you want to put your mink lure in there, like you can have them be a part of it. I feel like it's very, very welcoming as a family activity, trapping with kids.
That's awesome.
And
That's good advice too. And I agree on the river trapping being a lot more forgiving for youngsters to learn and not piss you off.
yeah, because it's like, yeah, I try not to ever bring my kids, like all of them. Like I'll bring Weston. Weston can come with me anywhere. He's just born with everything outdoors. I never have to worry about him. But I would like maybe bring Weston and one other of my kids if I'm gonna do something like a coyote set or a wolf set, and I'm like, all right, like just I only have to worry about one of you because I know I never have to worry about Weston. But yeah, I never want to like set my kids up for me to just lose my shit on them because it's like not really their fault because they don't understand the gravity of like if they touched the trap with their bare hands, or if they dropped their graham cracker right outside, like right next to your trap or something. It's just that you have to literally like cross your T's and dot your I's with the canine trapping. But yeah, the water trapping is super forgiving. And I like my kids love being by the water anyways. So it's just kind of like slowly ingraining them into the mindset of a water trapper because we're on it all year long. Like we'll be out there in the summer and they'll be like, "Oh, is that mink poop right there?" And I'm like, "Yep." Let's
Yeah,
pin
it's
it on
pretty.
the map.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you can see them start to learn and evolve and become a little bit more mindful of the area around them. But um, I want to change gears a little bit towards social media. So, one of your very close friends, somebody who has been a guest on this podcast, claims that you are the ultimate huntress influencer, despite being less cool than her. I don't know if you know who
He's
I'm
full of
talking
shit.
about, but what do you have to say about that? And in a more serious tone, what are your thoughts around social media in general, especially from a female's perspective that's kind of in the industry? Just curious your general thoughts there.
So like being a lady, a dickless hunter in the community, I feel like there's a lot of good that comes from it because my friend who's cooler than me, we talk about this all the time. Um, we just feel like anybody else. Like I feel like since I'm a woman, I don't need an extra pat on my back just because I'm a woman out doing like trapping and hunting and everything. Like I compare like if my husband and I were out, say we both posted in the same day. I shot a mule deer buck, he shot a mule deer buck, both the same size, basically the same hunt. I'm probably going to get a lot more praise, like, yay, good for you. And then he's probably not going to get like, he'll get like maybe like 80% less of a like, good job. When really there's no difference. We both went out there and accomplished the same thing. Um, so honestly, for me, like, I don't feel like women need an extra pat on the back more than a man. Um, but at the same time, I do appreciate that most of the people in the community are very like happy for any accomplishment I have. They're very accepting. I do get a lot of like the classic, um, "Oh, that's so cool. Did your husband help you do that?" Or like, "Oh, your husband's a really nice man to help you like run your trap line," or like, "Oh, like did he like good thing your husband knows where to find a bear or whatever." Like kind of get those comments and it's annoying as fuck, but like at the same time, I don't really let it get to me because it's like there are more women than ever getting into it. But traditionally, a lot of women really don't do this kind of stuff. So I can't really blame them for not have known anybody who's truly into it that's a woman. So I just don't let it really like get to me at all. Um I I feel like I get sometimes more criticism on the trapping side, which is very interesting. Actually, I feel like that's just trappers in general. That was something that was really surprising to me when I started to post about my trapping that wasn't raccoon trapping because I feel like no one gives a shit about raccoons. But yeah, even from like other hunters, I thought that was so strange. People were not happy about trapping, which just to me showed the total lack of education on trapping. The stereotypes are strong when it comes to being in the trapping world. But yeah, being a woman in that world is no different to me than being a man. It's like I might just have to work a little harder physically because I'm not as strong, like carrying in wolf traps or something because they're heavy as fuck.
Mhm.
Like I might only be able to carry 3 trapping sets, like a footholds with chains and then a few tools, go all the way in and come back and have to make 2 trips. Where like someone like you probably carry 6 and twice as much as me. But that's about the only difference I really feel like for being a woman is just we have to work a little harder because we're just not strong. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. I this it sounds weird because like I don't believe I need an extra pat on my back just because I'm a woman, um, or extra praise because I'm a woman. I'm just out here enjoying the best of life, and that's about it.
Well, speaking of like more women getting into hunting, into trapping recently, you can tell there's a little bit of a wave, which is awesome. And myself, being new to social media, podcasting and all this stuff in this realm, it's eye opening for me, even as a man. But your let's talk about branding, because that's one thing I've realized is valuable. And you have recently really leaned into what I think is one of the most unique and hilarious, I'll call it a rebrand ever. And you're wearing a sweatshirt for people who are not watching and only listening. But can you tell us a bit about the origin story of the Dickless Hunter?
Yeah. So I want to first off and say, like, on my social media, like, I've always just shared, like, the whole reason I start was just like get on here and share what I'm doing and just to connect with people. And I enjoy sharing my experiences and the things that are going out there. I enjoy like sharing funny shit, like joking and everything, because I've met like some of the most amazing people through here because I have opened up and showed who I am, and they've opened up, show who they are. It's like pretty easy to find your people on here. Um, and I've never posted or like I didn't start my Instagram with a goal of like trying to be anybody. Like I'm just here, like I'm just fucking here for fun, basically. And so I've grown quite a bit over the few years of just usually like funny stuff I posted. It's like shitting in the woods, like just that really is my personality. I'm kind of like fucked, but but um so the joke amongst my really close guy friends, like 99% of my friends forever have always been guys because for one, I hunt, fish. I want to do everything outdoors. I could give a fuck less about this typical interests of women, which no bash. Like, that's nothing, no judgment on them. It's just like, that's not who I am. So I've never been able to connect with most women. And, so I'd always just connect with the guys. Like my husband's friends, they're all my friends. Like we all get together and it's just a big freaking roast fest. And when I first met my husband and met his friends and everything, and I just didn't give a fuck and was 100% myself, they're like, what the hell? Like, what is wrong with her? And the joke was, they're like, you're like a dude. You're like a dickless dude. And I'm like, I kind of am. Like, so that was my joke. All my close friends called me the dickless dude because I was just that. I was exactly that. And I told this joke to my really good friend Ivy O'Gwenin, if that's how you say her last name. She lives up in Alaska. She's a badass trapper. I love her. She's one of my favorite people. But she was fishing steelhead fishing with us last year, and I told her the joke because she'd heard it. And I was like, yeah, they should all call me the dickless dude. And she sent me a really, really cool Christmas gift. She made a custom trapping logbook that was really, really cool. Just an awesome way to keep track of everything. And when you open up the first page, it was a picture of me. She had outlined a picture of me flipping the bird, and it said, dedicated to my favorite dickless hunter. I thought that was the funniest fucking thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so freaking funny. And I loved it so much that I decided I was going to have this gal down here who's now making my shirts for this whole dickless hunter thing, take that picture from my trap book and put it on a t-shirt. And I wore it down to the Western Hunt Expo. I had so many people laughing at that shirt. And other women being like, where did you get that shirt? And I was like, oh, I had it made because my friend Ivy like created this design. And I had several women be like, if you ever sell one, like I would buy one of those. Like that's awesome. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I had a hat made down there at the show, and it said the Dickless Hunter on it with an elk antler, like my logo now. And just made it as a joke for myself. Wore it that Saturday to the show and had so much like positive feedback from so many people. And I was like, you know what? And I started up a lot of like really cool conversations with a lot of ladies who were like, that feels like me. Like that's the joke amongst my friends too. Like they could relate 100% to why I was named the Dickless Hunter. Like they might as well have been named it too. And it just like it was really cool, and I started to realize that this could be something that pulls the women who are like me out of the woodwork and kind of like bring us together. And so I announced I was changing my handle name while I was in my hotel room at the show. And I was like, I'm just gonna fucking change my handle name. Like, and I had a talk with a couple friends down there who have bigger followings. And I mentioned about changing it. They're like, yeah, like that'd be funny as hell. I thought it was funny. And they're like, well, the only bad thing, like when you get like, if you have a decent following and you change your handle name, like you'll probably like lose people, or like it's not like a good business move or whatever the fuck. Like I'm not on here for business anyways. I'm just here to kind of fuck off. So it doesn't matter to me. And so I decided to change it, and I changed my handle name to the Dickless Hunter that night. Made a video, announced why, and then I had a bunch of hats made and asked who'd want one, and I sold like almost 80 hats in 9 days and shipped those out all over the country, which was super cool. Some to Canada, which was fun. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make this a fucking thing. Like, it's not like anyone who's sold apparel knows you just don't make like anything off of it when you're outsourcing it, which I'm not doing it to make any kind of income. I just think it's so fucking funny. Like, I think it's funny as hell. I think it's so cool. And I've met some really awesome women in the last 2 months from this whole thing. So that's why it's all started. And I think it's pretty damn funny if someone pointed me out and like, that's the Dickless Hunter. Like, I'd probably die laughing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like it's a good rallying point too for, whether that's new women coming in, women who've been around. And like you said, I think it just kind of probably speaks to something that a lot of women were feeling. And it's also just a cool logo, and it's a lot of fun and hilarious. So I love that.
Yeah.
I do want to go to another topic here, which is from a different little birdie who told me to ask you about a specific story.
Oh, God. I don't know. That's scary.
So I'm going to say a word, and then we'll gauge your reaction, and then hopefully you'll be up for giving the backstory behind it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Moose bear.
Oh, fucker, dude. Is that my husband?
I can't rat anybody out.
Oh, man. Okay. So I will share this story because honestly, I'm like, I have zero pride. Like, I'll probably roast myself more than anybody. But okay, so that's the joke. That's another joke that no one gets. And honestly, I have a sticker on my car that says that, and I get asked all the fucking time, usually at gas stations, oh, what's that mean? Are you an outfitter? I'm like, no, I'm a fucking idiot. And this is a joke from a friend who slapped this bitch on my car. But so I think it was like 3 springs ago, I invited my good friend Brittany Prosser out. She lives in Oregon. We met through Instagram, and she reached out because she had never been hunting. She really loved seeing other people go on hunts, but she absolutely knew nothing about it. She didn't have any family that did it, and she just wanted to ask for some advice. And I told her, we talked for a little while, and I said, you know what? She like reached out in the springtime, and I was like, you know what? If you're willing to buy a non-resident tag for here, you can come sit on my bait and we'll get you bear. And she was over the moon. She came out that year. Unfortunately, she didn't get a bear. We honestly didn't even see one. They were just being assholes. But she had a great time. I invited her to come out the next spring. And this time I was like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to do a 5-day hunt in Hell's Canyon, spot and stock. Like, we're going all in. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was given intel by the asshole who made this joke that this spot was the best spot for bears. He's like, oh yeah, we went in there and like we went in there one day and saw 11 bears, but like my bum knee, they were like 900 yards away, so we just didn't go after them. Oh, my fucking ass. We saw one fucking bear with a little cub all 5 days. So fuck him, he's a liar. That spot sucked. So, anyways, uh, but my mom, so it was me, Brittany, and my stepmom. And every day, Brittany and I would go out together, and then my stepmom would go off for herself. She shot, the night before the last night, whatever, we had split up, and my stepmom shot at a color phase bear on the side of this ridge. She missed, and it ran all the way down into the bottom. So the next night is our last night. Brittany and I went and sat on the top of that ridge that overlooked this absolute shit fucking steep ridge, like a mile down to the bottom to the creek. And I was like, you know what? Let's go sit up there because the bottom, there's a running creek. It's brushy. Like, I feel like we could probably see a bear down there. Plus, my stepmom just shot at one right here the night before. So maybe it's down in there somewhere and we might be able to pick it up. So we're sitting there fucking glassing. We had all our shit yard sailed out of our backpacks. So we're just sitting there having like a snack fest and everything's out. My trekking pole is stuck up in the ground and I'm glassing and I see down in the very, very bottom of this overgrown four-wheel road, something brown walking on the trail. And I'm like, oh fuck, like I just see some hair. I'm like, Brittany, there's a bear. And she's like, where? And I look again, and I just see patches of fur, like, behind these trees, bushes, walking on the trail. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, it's that bear that my stepmom shot at last night. I'm like, let's go! And I just grab my pack that has nothing in it, and the gun, because we were using my rifle for the weekend, and I grab it, and I put it on, and I just start running down the ridge. I'm like, come on, Brittany! And she's grabbed her, she's, like, scrambling, grabs her pack, and she's got, like, halfway on, and she's running after me. We drop down all the way to the bottom of this fucking ridge. I can't even explain how far it was. It was so fucking far, but we made it down so fast. Obviously, like gravity, take you down pretty quick. But we get down there and we're walking up real slow because there's like one last little rise and then it drops the creek like 60 yards. So we'd be like right above it. And I'm like, all right, let's looking, and I'm like, here, you just sit right here and look down that way. I'm gonna go up here and try to look up this way a little bit. I kind of like crawl off, and I look into the creek, and I see the bushes thrashing. I'm like, oh fuck yeah! I was like, it's right there. So I like crawl back to Brittany. I'm like, come over here, and I grab the gun, and we like put it right there, and I'm like, all right, you just get comfortable. I was like, he's right there in the bushes, and you can see like the bushes moving and like brown hair and stuff. And I'm like, oh yes, finally, 5 days of just pounding like the hardest country in the state, and we're finally here, perfect. And she's getting set up, and I decided to try to look at it and get a better look at it through my binoculars. And I look at it, and I just see something weird. It was this movement of this like this kind of thing. And I was like, wait, hold on. And I look at it, and it's a fucking moose. And I was like, what the fuck? And I'm like, Brittany, I was like, don't you, it's a fucking moose. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like about to cry because I was so exhausted for 5 days. I was so excited that it was like, yes, it's all come together. Couldn't have been more perfect. She's going to shoot her first fucking bear. Nope. It's a fucking moose. I don't even know why. Like, you looking at the country, I have never heard of a moose being down there or even would know why one is down there. But yeah, it was a fucking moose. So that's the joke that I fucked up. Brought us down like a mile down this ridge to go
And for people who
after a
are,
moose.
yeah, and for people who are listening who may have not been to Idaho, much less the Hells Canyon area, which I've stomped around some, and even compared to the Sawtooth where I'm at, like when you're probably talking about looking down and bombing down a hill for close to a mile, like imagine looking straight up a rock face almost, I would imagine, is where you guys were at the bottom of that now you had to hike back out of
Yeah.
for perspective.
Yeah. It was like, oh, it was the biggest kick in the nuts to that, like, have realized I fucked up for one. And for not to be a bear. And so she was laughing. She was freaking laughing hysterically. And I just wanted to just like jump off the cliff. I'm like, I'm done. Fuck this. But she's laughing. And she's like, you know what? I've never seen a moose in person. And I was like, Oh, well, you know what? Actually, there you go. I just wanted you to get a close up. So it's like, well, we're down here. Let's just glass for a little bit. And we glassed, never saw anything. And then I just like looking back up, I could see way the fuck up there my trekking pole stuck
Oh,
at the top. And I was like, oh God. I'm like, we gotta go all the way back up there. And so we're hiking, and I'm just like, it's tiring, but I was totally defeated. And I was ahead of Brittany a bit. And there was this spot on the next on the other side of the draw that all weekend I was saying, a bear should be right there. It's so green. It looks so good. And as we're hiking up, I look over and a bear pops out. And I was like, bring me a bear. And I like turn around, and then the cub comes running out after it. And I'm like, oh, fucking damn it. Gosh dang it. So yeah, that's the joke. Why it's like, so every spring when I go out and I tell my husband or our friend Eric, who's the asshole who made the sticker and jokes about it all the time, and he's the one who said that place was crawling with bears. He's like, I say, oh, I saw a moose, or I saw a bear today, and he'd be like, are you sure it wasn't a moose? And I'm like, shut the fuck up. It's been 3 years of that shit.
well, that's awesome. No, but that gives a good insight. Like you see on social media, everybody posts successes, all this stuff. Like the ability to just laugh at yourself. Like my whole quote hunting trapping career has just been my folly, because you go out there and you screw up. And if you don't
Yeah.
talk about it, poke fun of yourself and have fun with it, then you're just a stiff. And that's kind of sucks too.
Yeah, everybody messes up. Like,
Mm.
no matter how good you are, you will mess up some way, whether it's a big mess up or a little mess up. Like my husband and I are always saying, like, if you haven't missed an animal, you haven't hunted enough.
Yeah.
Like, you're not out there enough. If you haven't messed up, made a stupid mistake on your trapping line, then you probably haven't been trapping for very long. Like, there was 2 times this season where I made the absolute rookie mistake of leaving one of my safeties on when I swear I was like, I swear I took it off. I
Mm-hmm.
missed an otter twice because I forgot to take one of the safeties off. And like, I always usually share that like stuff to my story, but I think I need to like make it a post on my page so it's kind of like there permanently.
Yeah.
So if people sees me, they can like see me, they can go through and be like, oh yeah, whatever. But I always laugh at my own expense. Like, I go do everything. Like, I big game hunt every big game animal I can get tagged for. I upland bird hunt, waterfowl, trap. I coyote hunt. Like, I fish for everything, like bass, trout, steelhead, salmon. I'm out doing all of the things that are available to me all year round, and I have a lot of experience and time into it, and I still fuck up every time I go out. Like, it's always something. There's something that always happens. It's just you gotta like laugh it off and not think, like, don't make a big deal out of it, and it won't be a big deal.
Yeah.
So
Well, with the last two questions. So one, quickly, I kind of want your opinion. Like, what do you see as the future of trapping? Given like you mentioned about like kind of the oddities and having a weird perception, but what do you see as the growth and the future of it?
I like, it's kind of hard because I don't know if you've had this experience yet, but like most of the trappers are older. And I know some really amazing trappers who are older gentlemen, and like most of them don't have social media, but some of them do. And there's a stigma in the trapping community where a lot of trappers are really against people posting trapping things on social media. Like, they get really pissed off at people like myself or like Kate who share their trapping successes because they think that, well, if like that's just giving the anti-trappers like fuel when they see like an animal that's been trapped. And I'm not talking about like an animal in the trap. I'm just talking about like an animal that you've harvested through trapping. And I don't agree with that. I think there's a right way and a wrong way to go about everything, whether it's hunting or trapping and everything. There's definitely some shit that should not be shared on with trapping and hunting, either because it's just disgusting, or it's something that you can't share and only people who do trap are going to understand it. I think that's the one thing trappers need to be the most careful with is like, we can have private conversations about things that happen and how we can like work better to like avoid it. If someone's like wanting to get into trapping or they have an honest question, you having like a one-on-one discussion, but like sharing some things publicly where someone's going to have absolutely no context and not understand at all, I think that can cause a lot of issues with the stigma. But with the future of trapping, I really feel like it actually is important to show the positive sides on social media of trapping and do education. It's the same thing with hunting. Like, I think the more you try to explain, like, this is this trap, like a 330, like, this trap is really powerful. Anything that goes in it is going to be killed instantly. There's no suffering. There's no anything. It's a very, very ethical, clean, quick way to get an animal. Yeah, and then like just education, like because so many people, I'm sure you've heard, still think that like those jaw traps are a fucking thing.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, not for like decades. Like that's such a thing in the past, and like footholds don't break bones, and there's so many regulations on trapping that to make it as like ethical, moral, and clean for the animals as possible. It's just education. So I honestly think, oh my gosh, sorry, it's like burping. I think taking the step to try to be educational when it's applicable, like if you're out in the field and you just want to show like a quick little tip that shows like how safe it is or shows the efficiency and like do a little education, I think that's good. And show like the little things in between. Like I have like posted my story a few times where I was like, this is beaver poop. See that? Pretty cool.
It looks like you can put it right into your Traeger or whatever you're using to smoke, the little wood pellet.
It does look like a freaking pellet. Yeah, but yeah, like all those things, or like showing how you can like repurpose the animal you harvest for other things. Like beaver, is like the number one baiting tool you can have. And we eat it. Like the big ones, if you put it in the crock pot and you let it just slow roast forever, it's so freaking good. Like it's really good that way. And I've had it like when I first started dating Jace, he had trapped a beaver and he like took all of meat off of it and he had it in the freezer and he's like, have you ever tried beaver? And I'm like, no. And he's like, oh, we gotta try it, it's so good. And I'm like, all right, like I'm pretty game to try almost anything once. And true to bachelor freaking stereotype, he marinated it in everything that was in his fucking fridge and then threw it on the grill, and it was so fucking gross. I was like, ugh. It had an aftertaste that wouldn't leave my mouth for like an hour. I was like, that's vile. I will never eat a beaver again. Until we took one of my like really good sized beavers and took the hinds and put it in the crock pot, and that was so good. On top of rice. It was so good. And like you take the castor from it, the hide is beautiful. Like the fur is really something special. I use the skulls. The tails can be used for leather. Like that's it's a pain to skin. But trapping is a lot of tedious work when you're out there and then when you're taking care of the animal and everything. Like it's a full circle kind of thing to do. And people don't see that. They don't get to see that because a lot of the trappers are old timers who do not believe in sharing anything online, which I agree you shouldn't show the bad things, but you're also doing a disservice to educating people who don't understand.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a beautiful perspective. And then last question. So I always end with like a hypothetical, like a would you rather.
Oh.
So would you rather be forced to read and respond kindly via text to every single DM you get for the rest of your life, but you get your current house or property paid off? Or would you rather get to pick wherever you want to live with a brand new paid off house, but you have to do an hour every night for 5 years where you have to actually talk to people from your DMs, your friends excluded from that?
I would rather do the latter. I'd rather be on the phone for an hour and talk because, like, I would usually always prefer to have like a true interaction over a phone call or like a video message or even like a voice message than a text. Like,
Hmm.
I get way more drained trying to respond to like DMs and messaging. So I'd way rather talk to somebody because also if you're talking to somebody who maybe like say this in this group of people that I have to talk to, say it's people who are anti-trappers or like or they have questions or something, I would rather them hear the
Hmm.
like how I'm speaking and my sincerity rather than, it's so hard to judge a tone through
Hmm.
messages. So I'd rather do that.
Yeah. And you get to do it from wherever you wanted on your brand new property. So that'd be kind of cool too.
Oh, fuck yeah. Middle of nowhere on like 1,000 acres.
That would be nice. So, Laura, first and
Oh,
foremost, thank you very much for coming and chatting. I had a blast. I learned a lot. Will you tell folks like where they can find you both on social media, your jewelry and skull beading, and anything else you have coming up? I know there's like a woman's retreat coming up soon. So anything you want to plug or where people can find you would be awesome.
yeah. So you can find my personal page on the Dickless Hunter. It's a hard one to forget. And then you can find my business page. It's linked in my bio, I think, on my personal page, but it's Western Skies, Skulls, and Jewelry. I did a really good job at picking a very long, inconvenient name. And yeah, so actually, real quick, I am going to be a trapping instructor and fur handler instructor at the Bristol Bay Wild Women's Rendezvous down in Cary, Idaho in June. It's the 10th to the 15th, I believe. And my days where I'm going to be teaching is Friday and Saturday. It's going to be a really cool opportunity. I will say too that like if I'm going to get any opportunities from social media, opportunities like this to go be hands-on and give back and teach is something that I would absolutely love and I'm honored I get to do anyways. So I'm really excited if anyone's watching this and they want to go learn a lot of really useful skills because there are like 20 plus workshops you can choose from. Definitely look into going Bristol Bay Retreats. The info's there in the bio. So yeah, find
Awesome.
me there. Feel free. If anyone on here also like men or women have questions about trapping and either you're looking to get into it or you honestly just want some more education, like have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to share what knowledge I have.
That's awesome. And I'll link everything in the show notes too. So if you're listening now, you can go back to Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're watching this, and you'll see all the links so you can check it out and find a way to reach out. But Laura, thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks for having me. This was really nice.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody.